Thank you for joining today. Appreciate everybody making the time for part two of our award management session. So what we're going to be doing in today's session today is focusing on a lot of the reporting elements for managing your award within Amplifund. So I'm going to go through a brief agenda, and we're going to take a look at some of the items here that we're going to be taking a look at in the system and through a slideshow presentation. So the first thing that we want to do is let everyone know and provide the information to everybody in terms of where you can find help and where you can find tools and resources in order to help you manage your award and complete the actions that you're tasked with carrying out within Amplifund. So I'm going to go over some of those resources and the links and where you can find that information. Then I'm going to go through a little bit of an overview that talks about what the different actions are that you can complete within Amplifund and just kind of lay out all the different items we're going to be discussing today. And that's going to be followed by probably where we're going to be spending the majority of our time, which is actually in Amplifund, going through a real life example of how to execute these tasks and how to carry out all the different actions that we'll have to carry out in terms of going through the system and having to complete all of our different Amplifund actions in the system. So that's where we're going to be spending the majority of our time. I will also leave a good bit of time at the end for any questions that anybody has. And I will also mention that if you have questions as we're going through the presentation today and as we're going through the demo, please feel free to submit those via the chat feature, and we'll be able to address those either during the course of the presentation or at least during the Q&A portion at the end of the session today. So one thing that I wanted to point out and emphasize here are the resources that are available to you as a recipient of a Nebraska DED award. There is a specific help page, opportunity.nebraska.gov/Amplifund, where you can go and you can see specific resources, documents, videos, trainings that are going to be available to you on that web page. And there are various sections to help you manage your awards, regardless of the program or the type of grant that you're managing. So it's a comprehensive help site that has tools for all of the different awards. I will also mention that our session today is being recorded, and this session will be made available also as part of follow-up when it's done. So be on the lookout for a recording of this session, as well as other videos and guides that you can access on that opportunity.nebraska.gov/Amplifund webpage. And speaking of URLs, the URL with which to access your Amplifund account is going to be ne.amplifund.com. So anytime you need to log into your organization's Amplifund account to manage your awards, you'll access ne.amplifund.com. You'll type in your username and password, and you'll be able to log in. Now, some of us may already have our awards in Amplifund. We may be managing awards from prior years. Go ahead and type in your existing credentials. If you don't remember your password, there is a forgot password option that's available to you as well. For those of us that are new recipients or are new to Amplifund, you'll be receiving an invitation into the system to manage your award as soon as that's available. And depending on the program with which you're managing, your access or your invitation and when that's going to be sent will vary. So some will come in the first week of June. Some may be coming between today and tomorrow. So be on the lookout for those invitations if you haven't already received one. And just remember that the URL to access Amplifund is ne.amplifund.com. And just like that opportunity.nebraska.gov website, we definitely recommend bookmarking that so you have easy access to get there, and you don't have to worry about remembering it or typing in the URL every time. So those are some of the basics around logging in. What we're going to be taking a look at today is going to focus more on the reporting side, whereas in a previous session, the topics that we covered were a lot of the administrative aspects of managing your award within the system. Today, we're going to be talking about reporting from a financial and a programmatic perspective. So we're going to be looking at how to actually review your award within the system, and view the key details that are on that grant or on that award. Then we're going to take a look at accessing the budget, viewing your budget, adding expenses to your budget, and then reporting those expenses and submitting a reimbursement request through the system. So we're going to be taking a look at those financial reporting aspects, including the performance plan that is going to be available and that has, depending on the program that you're managing, specific programmatic goals for you to manage as well. Also, within Amplifund, there are some standard reports that you'll be able to run and that you'll be able to leverage in order to help you identify where you are with your grant and help you manage your program accordingly. So there are some built-in reporting tools within Amplifund that you can take advantage of as a Nebraska DED award recipient. Now we're going to take a look at some of those items as well. And right now we are going to transition and I'm going to log in and we're going to get started with the in Amplifund portion of today's presentation. So before I get logged in and before we start taking a look at Amplifund and the example and how to do the reporting that we're going to be taking a look at today, the first thing that I wanted to draw our attention to is I just wanted to do a quick review of our support site here, that opportunity.nebraska.gov/Amplifund. So here is where you'll find a lot of specific resources that are going to be available to you, resources that are specific to the actions you'll have to carry out within Amplifund, and also that are based on the program that you're managing as well. So I know we have an audience that has a variety of awards from various programs. So you'll be sure to find the right information specific to the program that you're managing. As you can see here, as an example, we have a lot of documents that have instructional screenshots and step-by-step instructions here, as well as additional videos. So be sure to scroll through to the appropriate section and find that information. There's also a lot of general information here as well. Frequently asked questions, how to troubleshoot specific items. So please feel free to reference the FAQ section here as well, because the chances are that you'll find an answer here to a question that you've thought of as well. So this opportunity.nebraska.gov/Amplifund website is a great resource and has a lot of great information for you to help managing the award that you've received from Nebraska DED. All right, so now I'm going to get into the Amplifund portion of our award management, and we're going to take a look at an example of how we can complete some of these reporting actions that I referenced that are going to be required for us to either report on our financials and submit reimbursement, or to get in and submit a performance plan or a programmatic goal, and log progress against those. So the first thing that we're going to do today is we're going to go in and we're going to choose the award for which I want to report for. So the first thing I'm going to do is to get into my grant or to my award, I'm going to go to this grant management section here in the left navigation menu, and I'm going to click on grants. And this is going to provide me with a list of all of the grants that I have in my Amplifund account. So I can see that my organization has been awarded 4 grants from Nebraska DED. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the grant for which I want to utilize today, and then I want to carry out the reporting for. Please note that you'll click on the name of the grant, and that's going to open everything up to you here. So The first thing I'm going to do is, as I'm looking at my grant and I'm looking at my award, I just want to take a look at and draw my attention to some key details. So one thing that you'll be able to see here on your award is you'll be able to see the total amount that's been awarded to you, if there's any matching requirement, and then your total budget. What you'll see here is any numbers, any financial information that totals up into your award. So as soon as you start tracking expenses, you'll start seeing that listed here. As soon as you start creating a payment request, you'll start seeing that information here. So a lot of information here in terms of financial information that you'll be able to leverage and you'll be able to see. In addition, if you scroll down, your award information screen is going to have more information, such as your awarding your start date and the end dates of your award, as well as the total budget amount. So a lot of key details, a lot of basic but important details are available and are provided here in this, what we call our award details page. When you are ready to go in and start reporting and going through the financial reporting process, you can go to the post-award drop-down menu and click on the financial tab here, which is going to open up the option to view budget or add expenses. So we're eventually going to want to add expenses and then submit those in a report that rolls up into our payment request so that we can request reimbursement. But before I even get into that, I just want to go to this post-award financial and budget section so we can look at what our award budget is going to look like. Now, depending on the program that you're managing, your budget may look different. It may have a lot of different categories. It may just have one. It really just depends on the program you're managing. So keep that in mind as you go and as you view your budget. Also, the permissions that you have in terms of editing your budget will also vary based on the program that you're managing. However, a couple of things are going to be uniform no matter which program you're managing as you're viewing your budget. So here, you're able to see the total budget amount for the grant funded portion. And then you have some options here at the top that you can check the boxes and it'll populate additional information for your budget. So for example, I'm only seeing the grant funded portion that's been budgeted for me. If I want to see the match portion, I can check the match box, and then that's going to show me anything that I have here on my budget pertaining to match as well. So if you have match as part of your budget, you'll be able to see that very clearly here on this part. Once you're looking at your budget, and if you're ready to report and add expenses in against your budget, then there's a couple of different ways that you can add expenses. You can either click on the dollar icon here, which will allow you to add expenses, or you can go to that same tab, that same menu we were looking at before, where you go to post-award, financial, and expenses. So once you're in this expenses page, you'll be able to do a couple of things. One is the first thing that we're seeing here at the top is providing us with the ability to run what I would call a little mini report of any expenses that I have already for this grant. So just kind of looking at this page right here, I could click run, and this is going to show me any expenses I have. Now, since I haven't added any expenses just yet, it's not going to show me anything because there's nothing to show. I haven't added any expenses. So when I click run, then I'm not going to see anything in there just yet. But we will add an expense shortly, and then I'll show you how you can utilize kind of these different filters to run the report and see your expenses in various ways. Now, since I want to get in here and I want to start reporting expenses and want to start getting those added in to my award and my Amplifund account, under the Actions tab, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click on the plus sign here. This is going to allow me to create an expense. And you'll see When I click on that plus sign, it's going to open up a window that allows me to indicate the expense that I'm creating. So the first thing that you'll see here is it's going to auto populate. It's going to show me the grant that I'm creating the expense for. And then here I can choose the specific category and line item that I want to track and add my expense against. This direct cost field is going to represent the total amount of the expense that I'm adding. Now, your expense may feature some match. Part of your expense, you want to indicate, how much you spend of grant funds. Another portion of it, you may want to indicate what your match is, and you'll be able to do that on the financials tab. So this direct cost needs to be the total amount of the expense, grant funded plus match. And we'll look at a couple of different examples. So this first example that we'll go through in terms of, how much we're expensing and, how much we're adding an expense for, I'll just use an example of adding an expense without any match on it. So let's say that I've already spent $1,000. So I'm going to type in my $1,000 here. On this exclude from match box, I'm going to check yes, because again, no part of this expense has matching funds or anything like that. And then down here, you'll see a couple of other fields that are going to be really important to us. So this expense date is very important because this expense date dictates the month of reporting that the expense rolls into. I mentioned that the process of submitting reimbursement includes rolling your expenses up into a monthly report. And also, I mentioned that you'll have a number of reporting options that are available to you to view how you're doing and your performance on your grant. So making sure that you're plugging in the correct expense date means that this expense will roll up into the correct monthly reporting period that you're going to be required to submit as well. So let's say that I am tracking and I am creating an expense for the month of May, let's say, then I want to make sure that I have an expense date here of May that's entered in. Now, this isn't a problem right now because we're currently in May. And you'll see here that when I go to create an expense, it's going to default to today's date. So pay close attention to your expense date because it is a required field, but it defaults to whatever today's date is. And let's say you may need to change this. Let's say if we're going to start reporting on expenses from last month, so from April, you're going to want to put in an April date, which you can either type in or you can use the calendar here to put in an April date. So making sure that you enter in the correct expense date is going to allow this expense to roll into the correct month's reporting period. The next section here is our expense status field, which is also really important as the expense status needs to be marked as reviewed. The only way that this expense is going to roll into your reporting period and into your reimbursement request is if it is marked as reviewed. So as you're creating the expense, make sure that you mark your expense as reviewed. There's also a payee field here where you can indicate who the payee is. So please go ahead and type that in if you want to indicate that. It's not a requirement. It's not a required field. So if you don't have that information or if you don't want to add it in, then that's okay as well. You can also type in a description of your expense here if you wanted to. It's really important that that you add in whatever details that your program requires of you. And currently the description field is just optional, but if you wanted to add in some information, you could do that here. There are a couple of other tabs and places that I want to look at here as we get started. So the financials tab is just going to show us our total amount. This is where we would indicate how much of this expense is match if I didn't check this exclude from match box on the general tab. So nothing here to worry about for right now because none of my expense has or includes any matching on it. The attachments tab, however, is very important. The attachments tab is where we need to submit our source documentation. So if I have a receipt or an invoice or something that I'm charging, and some documentation that I have specifically for this expense, then this is where I would want to get that added in. So you click on choose file. You see there's this choose file button here. So go ahead and click on choose file and you'll be able to select something um, and upload something from your desktop. So if you have anything here like supporting documentation, receipts, any type of invoice, any source documentation that's required by your specific program, you'll be able to upload it here in this attachment section. Again, all the different programs that are represented on this call today may vary. So please make sure that you're in touch with your program manager and you're also referencing the support documentation to identify, what you have to attach and where that has to be attached. Once you have the expense information populated, you have your source documentation attached, and everything looks good, go ahead and click on Create to create this expense. As soon as you create this expense, you'll see here your expense is listed, and it shows you all this information pertaining to the expense that you have created. When you are ready, or if you want to create another expense, then we just go into the Actions tab here and click on the plus sign to create a new expense. So the process of creating the expenses are going to be the same. You create one, and then you go through the same steps and that same process to create another one. This time, I'll create an expense for our direct costs category and line item. And this time, we're going to create an expense using the example of an expense that also has match as a part of it. So let's say this time I'm going to create an expense for $5,000 where 3,000 of this is grant funded and 2,000 of this is matching funds. So I'm going to put in the total amount. I'm going to put in the total 5,000, which is again, grant funds versus plus match funds. I'm not going to check this exclude from match box. I'm going to follow my same rules as I did before, paying careful attention here to the expense date and also making sure that my expense status is set to review. And here on the financials tab, I want to indicate how much of this $5,000 is actually matched. And the way that we do that is in this cash match amount section here towards the bottom. So you can add your match as either a dollar amount or a percentage. I always find it easy to just add it as a dollar amount and indicate the exact amount that's being matched here. So the example that I used, I said, 3,000 of this expense is grant funds and 2,000 is match. So here is where I type in my $2,000. And you'll see that this automatically updates to 2,000. My grant funded amount automatically updates to 3,000. So what you see here is we have a direct cost of 5,000, which is a total of my grant funded expense and my match amount. So again, here on the general tab, I put in the total amount, grant funded plus match. On the financials tab, I indicate how much of that total amount is match, and those items automatically update for me. When I go to the attachments tab, I go through the same process as I did for any other expense, which is I attach my supporting documentation here on the expense level. And if you wanted to attach multiple files at once, you have the ability to do that here as well. Review your information, make sure that it's selected as reviewed, make sure that your documents are attached and that your match is accounted for, and then go ahead and click on create here and you'll be able to see a list of the expenses that you've created. Now that we've looked at how to create a expense that is 100% grant funds and one that is made up of grant funds and cash match, let's take a look at how to create an expense that is 100% cash match. So I'm going to go back to my create icon here so I can create a new expense. Again, repeat the same process where I indicate the category and the line item that I'm creating an expense for. So right here, I'm going to include the total amount of the expense. Remember, the direct cost is always going to be your grant funded plus match. So in this scenario, I want to create an expense that's purely match. So let's say I have an expense here for $3,000 of match funds and nothing else. So in my direct cost field, I'm going to type $3,000 because remember, your direct cost is always grant funded plus match. And in this case, I have $0 of grant funds and I have $3,000 of match. So I'm going to add in that $3,000 here. I'm going to make sure that my expense date is set up accordingly. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that this one is for the month of May. So I want to make sure that I have my May expense date in here. Remember, the expense date is really important in determining which monthly reporting period this is going to roll into. Also, on our expense status, I want to make sure that my expense status shows up as reviewed. So I'm going to click reviewed here, add my payee and my description if applicable. And now here, I'm going to go to my financials tab. And in this financials tab, this is where I'm going to make sure I indicate that this expense amount is 100% match. So you'll see here, I have $3,000 in my grant funded amount, and I have $0 of match. That's because I haven't done anything down here yet. So because this is 100% cash match, I can either say as a percentage, this is 100% match, or I can type in my dollar amount and say that of the $3,000, $3,000 is cash match. And you'll see here that updates. So now I have a total expense amount of $3,000, and you'll see that the grant funded amount is 0. Again, we're going to go to our attachments tab, attach any required source documentation that needs to be uploaded here. And once we've verified that everything is correct, I'm going to go ahead and click on create. And now I have my third expense created, which is going to be for our May reporting period, and is also also includes our $3,000 cash match expense. Once I have all of my expenses created, or at least once I have my expenses created for the appropriate month, this is where you can go in and this is where you can request, start to create the reporting period and start to request payment for that month's expenses or several months' expenses. So in order to begin that part of the process, we need to first go into our post-award drop-down menu here, go to management, and go to reporting periods. And this is going to allow us to create our monthly reporting periods for every month's worth of expenses that we want to request payment for. So currently we have 2 months that we want to create reporting periods for, April and May. So you can start by going into the top right-hand corner and clicking on the plus sign, which is going to allow you to begin creating your reporting periods. You'll see here that this is asking me, what type of reporting periods do I want to create? Since we're doing the financial or expenses process, I'm going to click on expenses. And now I can select the month that I want to create a reporting period for. So because I know that we've added in our various expenses for April and for May, I want to get started by creating my April reporting period. So I'm going to choose my April dates. You'll see everything is pre-populated here in nice monthly intervals for you. So you'll click your April reporting period and you'll click on save. once you're in this reporting period, once you create that, you'll see here that you're looking at your reporting period. You have your start date and your end date. It shows the reporting period is open. So it's going to show you what your total overall awarded amount is. And it's also going to show you what your expense amount is for this particular month. Remember, part of the expense process that we carried out was on that expense status, we marked everything as reviewed. So if you have any expenses that you did not mark as reviewed, then you'd be able to see how many expenses for the month you don't have as reviewed. And this is going to prompt you to go in and take a look at those expenses to make sure that you're updating everything accordingly. So this is how everything should look to you. You should have the total amount of expenses that you've entered for that period, and you do not want to eventually submit a reporting period that has some unreviewed expenses. So you always want to make sure that your unreviewed expenses section shows you as at a 0. In order to submit this reporting period, go ahead and scroll down, and you'll be able to click on the close button. So you'll notice here that when you click on close, it shows you this little message that indicates that once you close this, it submits a notification to your program manager at DED. And what it does is it's also going to send them a notification that you've closed this reporting period. And you will not be able to make any changes to this reporting period once you're done. So go ahead and click on close when you're ready to close this out. You can go back to your reporting periods page. And now that you're here on your reporting periods page, you'll notice that there's a new icon that's also appeared. This is going to allow you to submit your reimbursement request. Now, before we submit our reimbursement request, remember, we had that additional expense for the month of May. And you can roll more than 1 month of expenses into a reimbursement request. So before I submit my payment request for just April, I want to submit for May as well. So I'm going to have to go and create my May reporting period if I want this to be included in that same reimbursement request. So go through the same process of clicking the plus sign, going into checking expenses, and then adding or selecting your month of May here. And what this is going to do is the same thing. It generates the reporting period. It shows you your total overall awarded amount, and it shows you your total expense amount for this period of time, which is $3,000. Remember, this was our $3,000 match expense. Scroll all the way down to submit this. Once this looks good, since we're still in May and you may have additional expenses, you don't have to submit this. But if you're ready to submit reimbursement for this, you can go ahead and click on close. That's going to say now this will update and show you that the status is closed. You can go back to your reporting periods section here. Again, I can see I have 2 reporting periods because we just created 2 different reporting periods. So now, in order to create my payment request, I can do a couple of different things. I can either go into the post-award drop-down menu, click on cash flow, and I can go to payment requests where I'll be able to create a payment request, or I can just quickly generate a payment request directly from this button here on the reporting periods page. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to click on that little icon, and this is going to allow me to create my payment request. Now, since I created this payment request directly from my April reporting period, then this related reporting period section is already populated. You can scroll down and you can see all of the relevant expense data that you entered in for all of your expenses for April, because the April reporting period is tied in to this payment request. You'll see if I unselect it and there's no reporting period tied to this, then none of my expenses show up here. So in order to get expenses to start populating that you've closed out, go to your related reporting period section and you'll be able to add any reporting periods that you've closed. So we just closed our April and May reporting periods together. So I can choose April and I can see all of my expense data from April shows up. I can also click on my May reporting period, and then that updates with all the information from May as well. So very important to pay attention to those reporting periods and make sure that those reporting periods are closed out before you submit a reimbursement request. That way, all the expenses roll all the way up, and it mitigates the risk of you entering an expense and then having to type in that amount later on and maybe entering in the wrong amount. Everything is tied to each other. Everything just rolls up into this payment request. Go ahead and give your payment request a name. In this case, I'm going to give it a kind of a version number. So this is my first payment request. I'm going to add in the date created. So here you can just populate whatever today's date is or whatever the date that you're creating. Indicate the payment type. The payment status will update as soon as you're submitting it or as soon as it gets approved by your program manager at DED. So you'll be able to see that there. Your financial detail section here will show you the total amount of your expenses. It'll show it to you by category. So you'll see the total amount of my expenses for both months for direct costs, as well as the total amount of expenses for equipment and supplies for both months. That'll show up there. This is showing me my grant funded amounts, whereas my match contributions show up down here. And you'll see on this net total, this gives you the difference between the direct costs, between the grant funded amounts that you've expensed and the match contributions. So you'll see that the total request here is going to be your $4,000. You'll also have some tools that are available to you here, like remaining grant balance. If you click here, you'll be able to see a lot of the information that's coming from that grant details page that shows a lot of the calculations. So you'll see here, this shows me total amount of my expenses to date, how much of that are match contributions. So a lot of good information here as you're going through and submitting your reimbursement request. You'll have a comments section here that you can add in. So if you want to indicate anything or notify your program managers of anything in particular, you'll be able to use this field here to do that and to add in your comments. And here you'll be able to upload any documentation that you want or that your program requires. So there's a lot of places where you can upload information, whether it's on the expense where it's required, where your source documentation has to be added, the reporting period, or on the payment request. It'll just vary by the type of program that you're managing. So again, when it comes to this, please just make sure you're paying attention to the specific program requirements as you go through and as you complete these actions. If you are ready to submit your reimbursement request, this green submit button will allow you to submit the request to your program manager at DED. So as soon as you click on the submit button here, your program manager at DED gets notified that you've submitted this reimbursement request, and you'll see here that it is changed to a status of submitted. Before it was not submitted, so now it's a status of submitted. It says who submitted it, and it updates the date that it was actually submitted. Here on the related reporting periods, you're going to be able to see, and you're going to be able to drill into the actual reporting periods and expenses that you completed that make up this reimbursement request. Now, I will mention that, in addition to you receiving, or in addition to the program managers receiving a notification when you submit this reimbursement request, when they take a decision on your reimbursement request in the system, you will receive an email notification of that decision as well. So whether your payment request gets approved or whether it gets denied, you will receive an email notification letting you know of the decision that was made and the status updates here as well. So as soon as they review it and take action on it, you will be made aware of whatever the decision is via email, and you'll always be able to check the status of your payment request as well. One of the other things that I wanted to mention here is, again, because the payment request submission process entails adding the expenses, submitting that reporting period, and then submitting the payment request, you can very easily see here that I have my reporting period that's connected into my payment request. So I can click into my April reporting period right from there. I can access my expense page directly from here as well, so that I can view my expenses. And here's really where you can start to take advantage of the expense page and the different views that are available and the different reports that are available. So this is the place where we go to add in our expenses, but also you can go ahead and run a report and view all of your expenses. So you can add in a time frame. So you can say, show me all of my expenses. Show me my expenses for last month, show me my expenses for the last 6 months, the last year, or you can choose a custom date range here. So let's say I just want to see all of my expenses. You can also filter this down by grant and by category as well. So if you want to choose the specific category and budget line item, then you'll be able to view that and you'll be able to see that here as well. For right now, I just want to see all of my expenses regardless of the category and line item. So I'm just going to choose this and I'm going to click on run. And it's going to show me a list of those 3 expenses that we all created together. Now, the options that you have when you're viewing this report of your expenses does not stop there. You also have the ability, as you can see these different columns here, you have the ability to enable and disable columns accordingly. So if you know that you don't have any in-kind match, then you can uncheck that box and the in-kind match goes away. You don't have any payee, so you get rid of that. You can check boxes on to add new information. So like if you wanted to see the budget category that these were added against, you could select that. Some of the most common ones and some of the most beneficial ones from a reporting standpoint is total budgeted, total expensed, and total remaining. So you turn all of these on and you'll be able to see a nice little report of all of that information that's available there regarding the different expenses. This view can be manipulated and it can also be exported into an Excel file. So if you go to the top right-hand corner in the icon toolbar, there's this export button that allows you to export these expenses with this view into Excel so that you can manipulate the data and you can view it however you would like to view it here. In addition to being able to view this expense data and this expense information, you also have a number of reports that are going to be available to you that you can leverage to keep track of where you are within your program and to make sure that you're on track and that your spending and everything that you've expensed is accurate. If you go in the left navigation menu here, I want to draw your attention to this reports section. And there are a number of reports that are pre-populated in your account that are going to be pertinent to showing you some information about your budget and your expenses. So if you're really looking for a tool to manage your award, make sure you're on track, see where you are, where you are in terms of spending, then you can go ahead and click on reports. In the post-award bucket here, we have our grant budget variance report. This is our most commonly used report that'll show you a lot of the key details in terms of kind of where you are in a grant, what's been budgeted, how much you've spent to date, and how much you have left. So I'm going to look at this report here. Also, this left navigation menu can be collapsed. So if you wanted to see a larger view of this report, then you can go ahead and do that here. Right now, when you run the report, it'll just generate a report for your grants. You can choose the grants that you want to run this report for by using this grant filter. But more importantly, when you're looking at this, you can go ahead and you can just kind of take a look here at the specific line item, responsible individual for the line item. You can scroll across. And what this grant budget variance report does is it shows you what is the total funded amount versus what the actuals and what's been expensed against it. And then it shows you what the variance is and what your spend down is and what your expected spend down is. So this grant budget variance report is a really good way of showing information that we need to track some of our spending here. You can always also get rid of specific pieces of information, like if you don't have any in-kind, these are sections that you can remove from the report itself. So please feel free to take advantage of some of these in-report filters here that are part of this report. These reports can also be exported into either a PDF, an Excel file, or rich text format, like a Word document. So please feel free to take advantage of the export options as you're running and as you're leveraging these reports. Other reports that are available to you as well is the grant expense detail report. And what this report will show you is this will show you a line by line itemization of all of the expenses that you've entered for a particular grant against specific budget categories. So whereas the grant budget variance report just showed us our totals in terms of how much has been budgeted and how much we've spent, this is showing us of that total amount that we've spent, the breakdown of each expense that we've added in here. So you'll be able to see this specific information here. And again, you'll be able to choose the different grants that you have in your system that you're managing in Amplifund, whatever the different budget categories are, and whatever the different line items may be. One other report that I wanted to draw our attention to before we move on to the next piece is within the grant itself. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to the grant that we've been looking at and that we've been managing. And I'm going to go to my grants section. I'm going to click on the name of the grant. And we're going to take a look at one of the other options here. So if I go to and I look at this grant page, there's also an analytics tab. And this analytics tab is going to show me a dashboard of specific financial information relative to this grant. You see, every grant has this analytics page, has this dashboard. And as I'm looking at our dashboard here, a couple of things I want to point out that are going to show up at the top, which are, you're still going to get a view of some of the key pieces of information here. You're going to see, so like your grant manager, your start date, your end date will all populate. Any task that you have, and you have some quick create options here as well. But I'm going to scroll down and I want to focus on some of our spending and how this is going to show up for us. So you'll see here, this shows in graph or in chart form some of our different spending and the spending to date here. So you'll be able to see snapshot of your spending to date and your spending on a monthly basis, as well as some of the spending that's taken place overall for your grant. So it'll show you some different colors in terms of how much you spent or how much is budgeted versus how much you've spent. You can also change the graph styles here as well. So if you go and if you click on the top right hand corner, you'll be able to export any one of these. If you right click into the tile, then you'll be able to change the graph type. There's a number of different options that you'll have. You can feel free to go ahead and play around with this and just kind of see some different information. But really, this is great for showing a lot of different information and kind of some different formats here. So feel free to take advantage of this grant analytics page that's available to you. Another thing that you can do on this analytics page is you can go into the top right hand corner and you can make this analytics page your home page. So if this is a grant that you're managing consistently, if you want to see this view of your expenses as you get into Amplifund, and every time you log in, you can make this your home page instead of your calendar being your home page. I'm going to go back to our grant details page. And just to kind of recap a little bit of what we just looked at, we have the process where you can go in, view your budget, add in your expenses, submit your monthly reporting period, and then submit your reimbursement request. And also remembering that the analytics tab on your grant will show you that dashboard, and you can leverage reports in the reports section here under post award. There are a number of different reports that you have available to you that will show you information about your grant. Now that we've covered a lot of our financial reporting processes, the last thing that I wanted to do today before we talk about support and have time for our question and answer session is I wanted to focus on those programs that have performance plan goals and have a requirement to submit programmatic reporting. So in order to access that information, you'll go to your post award tab here at the top. And whereas before we were going to the financial section to submit our expenses and submit our reimbursement requests, now I'm going to go to the performance tab here and I'm going to click on my performance plan. So as I click into the performance plan here, again, depending on the program and the award that you're managing, your performance plan may vary. You may have one, you may not have one. If you have one, you'll have a task associated with it, and you'll be able to access it here in this performance plan section. So in this one, I can see that I have a performance plan goal. I can click on my performance plan goal here, and I can see, what I have to do, what the specific ask is in terms of how I need to report against this. So for this one, this is very specific to one of our programs where you have to upload your final report in the attachments tab. You type in the report name. So a lot of instructions here on what to do. In order to start actually following these instructions and adding your progress or adding in your final report, you're going to click on this trophy icon here. And this is going to take you to the screen where you can add in your final report. You'll see when I click on the trophy icon, it shows me I don't have anything created yet. So you go to the top right-hand corner, locate that plus sign. That's going to allow you to create your item. And what you do here is follow the instructions. So first, upload your final report in the attachments tab here. So go ahead and click on the upload file. Let's say, search your desktop for your final report, get that updated in here. And then here in the answer field, you'll type in the report name in this section. So I'm going to type in a example report name. And if you have any notes or any information that you want to make available to your program manager, go ahead and add those notes in. So again, if you're submitting your final report, this is what you would do. This achievement date field will automatically populate, will default to today's date. Go ahead and change that if you need to adjust this date. And click on create. So in this scenario, I've gone in and I've looked at my performance plan and I've added in my achievement. So I've updated that final report. And again, it's important to make sure that you're going in and you're adding that final report into the performance plan. Another way that you can access these performance plan goals is by going here to the activity section and going into achievements. This gives you somewhat of a quick create option here where you can see all of the goals that you have to report against. And when you're ready to report your achievement, you just click here. It's going to bring you that same page. Follow the instructions on your performance plan goal as you're entering in your achievement. And remember, not every program is going to have performance plan goals. The reporting and the programmatic requirements will vary from program to program. So for specific information, make sure you're referencing that opportunity.nebraska.gov website and that you're referencing any of the support documentation that will indicate to you what you have to do and how you have to fill out your reports. So as we wrap up on the material that we covered today, we went into the grants and we reviewed how to submit our reimbursement request, which consisted of going into our grant, viewing our budget, adding expenses in the post-award expenses page. So we went in here, we clicked on the plus sign to add in expenses. Then we went into our post-award management and reporting periods section, which allowed us to go in and create our reporting period. Once the reporting period was created, we were able to create our payment request and get that payment request submitted to Nebraska DED for approval. Once we submitted our payment requests, we were able to answer any questions or do any of our performance related reporting in the post-award performance plan section by accessing the goal that we had to respond to, clicking on the trophy in order to mark and add any achievements. One thing that we did was we also looked at how to run some reports. So that analytics tab shows us that information in terms of some of those dashboards. Our reports section here shows us that grant budget variance report and that grant expense detail report as well. So at this time, we're going to pause and we're going to review any questions that have come in. If you have questions that you've been holding, feel free to go ahead and submit those right now via the chat feature on your Zoom. We're going to review the questions and we'll be back online in a second and provide answers. Again, if you've been holding a question, now is a great time to submit via the chat. So one question that we received is actually a very pertinent question. This is about somebody that logs in and it takes them to the applicant portal. So for a lot of us, we are applicants that are now recipients, or we have an active application or an application that we worked on. So it's taking us to our applicant portal. Now, where I am is what we call our recipient portal, where you can manage your award. And in order to kind of toggle back and forth, it's very easy and it's very straightforward. So as long as you have an applicant portal account turned on, then you'll be able to do it. So let's take a look at how we can access the applicant portal when you're in the recipient area, or how you can access the recipient portal when you're in the applicant portal. So I will walk through that here in a second, and I'll show you guys exactly what it's going to look like. So if you log in to Amplifund and it takes you into your recipient portal, and you want to access any active or submitted applications you've worked on, go into your top right-hand corner where you'll see your name, and then go ahead and click on Applicant Portal. What that's going to do is it's going to take you to your organization's applicant portal page, where you'll be able to view any previous applications you've submitted or any active applications that you're working on that are in the Amplifund applicant portal. So when you're in the recipient portal, you go in and you select the applications tab, and it takes you into the applicant portal. If you're in this applicant portal and you want to get back into your recipient portal, similar idea, where you go to the top right-hand corner, click the drop down, click on Amplifund, and it takes you back into your recipient portal. So transitioning back and forth to your applications and to your active awards will take place in the top right-hand corner by your name or your email address. So again, if you're actively managing your award in the recipient portal, go ahead and click on your name, go to applicant portal. Once you're done here and you're ready to go back to your recipient portal to manage your award, click on the little drop down, click on Amplifund, and it'll take you to your recipient portal. Another thing that I'll point out, again, we have a lot of representation from different programs today. So your program or your active award may already be in Amplifund, and you may have already received an invitation. You may be receiving an invitation, depending on your program, within the next couple of days, or at least by the first week of June, you'll have an invitation into the system. So keep that in mind. If you haven't already received an invite into the system, that you will within the next couple of weeks at least. And if you are already an active Amplifund user and you're trying to log in and you forgot your password, just go to ne.amplifund.com, click on the forgot password link, and it will send you a password reset. As you're thinking about any additional questions, I also wanted to point out and remind everyone again, opportunity.nebraska.gov/Amplifund for a lot of great help resources. There are pages that are specific to your program, as well as the frequently asked questions section, which is a lot of good general information. Also, I wanted to let everybody know that as a Nebraska DED recipient, you also have access to the Amplifund support site and the Amplifund support team. So if you're in Amplifund, if you're trying to complete or carry out any of these actions that we looked at today, or in previous sessions, and you need to reach out and get some help within Amplifund, then you can either from your user drop-down menu, go and click on help and support, or in the icon toolbar, access the little eye icon. They both bring you to the same page, which gives you two different options. It gives you the link to the Amplifund support site, amplifund.zendesk.com, as well as the ability to create a support ticket and get that support ticket submitted to our customer support team. So you'll see here, this is going to auto-populate with your name, your email address, type in the subject. So maybe, you can't find your expenses or you don't know how to create a reporting period. Go ahead and put in a subject indicating the area that you have a question for. Type in a description or the actual question itself. There's a spot here where you can attach files. So if you have any screenshots, and then go ahead and submit that question by clicking submit to the Amplifund support team. Our support hours are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Central Time. If a ticket comes in after hours, then it just gets picked up and worked the next business day. So please feel free to reach out to the Amplifund support site or the support team accordingly. And if there are no other questions, then we can wrap up for today. I appreciate everybody's time. Again, please feel free to reach out and access the opportunity.nebraska.gov website for support and for resources, or contact the Amplifund support team with any questions you may have as well. So again, thank you very much for your time this week. Hope everybody enjoys the holiday weekend, and we will talk to you later. Thank you.